So you may know in the last couple of years, Nintendo released two plug-and-play systems. I'm talking about the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. Those were two classic consoles from Nintendo, which they did release. It was pretty much an emulation box that pretty much had a whole bunch of games stored on those boxes, and you can plug it up into your TV. And those were actually a very good idea from Nintendo, just because they would be good for gifts. They're just overall just a very good vibe, and just the fact Nintendo has a very good reputation when it comes to video games, and probably a lot of people remember their childhood playing Nintendo games. Of course, these were going to be a big hit from Nintendo, and indeed they were pretty much big hits from Nintendo. They were sold out everywhere for quite some time. The stock was limited. Everybody was talking about the SNES and SNES Classic. Overall, they were just very good ideas from Nintendo, and it looks like a lot of other companies on the market wanted to capitalize on what Nintendo was doing when it comes to retro gaming. One company I can think of off the top of my head that wanted to steal Nintendo's fire is Sony. Sony saw this as a good idea, and since they are in the gaming market with the PlayStation, and they do have old consoles like the PS1 or the original PlayStation, it makes sense that a company like Sony would want to do what Nintendo's doing, because they see the value in this. They know they can profit off this. It just overall makes a very good overall it's just a very good idea for the company, for money and things like that. So in the last couple of months, Sony finally announced that they would be making a PS1 Classic, and this PS1 Classic seemed like a good idea, but then finally when we got the full list of the 20 games on the PS1 Classic, a lot of people out there were just disappointed. Yes, we got some hit or miss games on there, but overall we didn't get a lot of games that a lot of gamers wanted on the PS1 Classic. Some of the two games that weren't on the PS1 Classic that really kind of was disappointing was the fact that we didn't even get Crash Bandicoot or Spyro, or even some type of Rayman games, especially Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games. Those are actually games that are staples back on the PS1. You can kind of say that they are kind of like legendary when it comes to the PS1. If you've ever played a PS1 back in the day, or even if you played a PS1 recently, then you'll probably know about Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Granted, they did remake those games, so I don't know if that's why they didn't want to put them on the PlayStation 1 Classic, or just the fact that maybe they didn't have the licensing for those games. They couldn't actually put them on the box. But whatever the case may be, most people were actually disappointed about the lineup when it comes to the PS1 Classic. But it looks like there's some more information regarding the PS1 Classic right now. The PS1 Classic is actually set to come out next month. I don't remember what time in December, but it is set to come sometime in December. So it's right around the corner, and we do have more information on it. From what I'm hearing from everybody who've already tried the PS1 Classic, it looks like it's going to be very disappointing. If you already thought the games list on the PS1 Classic was disappointing in the first place, it looks like it's even going to be more disappointing than what you thought. A lot of people have already tried this out. One thing to note right off the bat is when you actually play the PS1 Classic, the user interface, from what I'm seeing, is just not that great at all. Take a look at what I've seen on the internet of the PS1 Classics interface. The PS1 Classics interface is just not that great. When you look at this, it's just not polished. It actually looks like some type of a student made this for like their emulation project. Overall, it just does not look that great. And for it to be a company like Sony, you would think they would have better quality control over the whole PS1 Classic. But you can see with the games list not being good, and with the interface just not being good, it looks like they really didn't take time and effort to really make this thing. I think really what happened with this thing was they just wanted to throw this thing out as fast as possible, so they didn't have time to get some of the licensing for some of the better games on the PS1. They didn't have time to make the user interface and things like that. But come on, with this thing costing $100, and of course with tax it's going to cost well over $100, you would expect more from a company like Sony. We're not talking about a company like At Games, which you may know have made these Sega Genesis clones, and those Sega Genesis clones aren't good at all. The emulation is bad. The controls are bad. Overall, everything's bad about those at-game Sega Genesis clone consoles, or plug-and-play consoles as well. Those are not great ones, but you have to take in consideration At Games is not a big gaming company. We're not talking about Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, but Sony is behind this thing, and it's their own product. Don't they want a good reputation for their Sony brand and for their PlayStation brand? Because, I mean, this is their product after all. And then when people buy this thing, they're going to be quite disappointed about the games not being all that great, how the User interface is not going to be that great as well. Overall, this is not a really good thing for Sony. It looks like this thing is not actually going to be worth buying on day one. So if you're thinking about buying the PS1 Classic, maybe you want to rethink your purchase because it just does not look great at all. And there's also some bit of more news about the PlayStation Classic. It looks like when it comes to the user interface and what you can actually do on the user interface, it looks like it's limited. If you remember back on the NES Classic and SNES Classic, you had a whole bunch of different options when it comes to settings in the UI. So you can do stuff like save states. You can probably put borders around certain games. That's one thing you could do on some of these older games when it comes to these plug-and-play consoles or just emulation, because a lot of these games don't play in 16:9 aspect, of course, on a TV. They actually play in, I think, 4:9, so it plays like a picture tube, a square box in the middle of your screen. Then, of course, the sides are just going to be black sides, and then a lot of times you can put borders around your games. You can also put filters on top of the game too to make it look like a retro game. If you wanted to say put like scan lines on top of the game, just put different things on top of the game to change the way the game actually looks on your TV. But it looks like Sony's not doing any of this in the UI. The UI is pretty bare bones, and like I said, on top of that, the UI just does not look great at all. And since the game selection is not good, it really does puzzle me why they would even want to release this. Yes, I understand Sony wants to make money as fast as possible, but why would they want to do it this way? It's just going to hurt their brand. It's just overall not a good reputation. Of course, people still know that Sony and the PlayStation brand is a very good brand, and their consoles are very good, so I don't think it's going to hurt their reputation all that much. But I don't know if this thing's going to sell all that much, just because now people know the lineup's not great, the 20 games you're getting is not that great, and the user interface is not all that great. And on top of that, I did also hear that some of the games that are much more 3D heavy based, like Tekken, for instance, doesn't run all that well in it. You do get lag from time to time, so it's not that great of an experience. I don't know what type of chipset they're using, what type of processor they're using, but whatever they're using under the hood of the PS1 Classic, some of the games people have confirmed don't run all that great on the PS1 Classic. They're a little bit laggy. They're not unplayable by any stretch of the imagination, so don't worry about that. But they are the type of lag that could bother you from time to time, and it's definitely noticeable. And some people out there have confirmed that some of the games just don't run that great on the PS1 Classic. But just everything's not adding up when it comes to the PS1 Classic. It really looks like the PS1 Classic is not really a good idea from Sony. It looks like they should have waited maybe a year to actually release this thing. It looks like they just wanted money as fast as possible, but it's just not that great. And considering this thing is $100, that's very expensive, especially if you don't already own a one of those plug-and-play systems. I would definitely maybe look away from the PS1 Classic, definitely go with the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. And then of course Nintendo is rumored to come out with that whole N64 Classic. We know that's coming sometime down the line, so just wait for that. Honestly, I would skip out on this system altogether. I know that there'll be these die-hard Sony fans that'll jump on the bandwagon really earlier and actually buy the PS1 Classic because they see the value in it, or maybe they're just collectors of PlayStation stuff and they just want to have this to own in their collection. But honestly, if you're not a die-hard Sony fan and you can't look past the flaws of this, or if you're thinking about just getting this for a gift for somebody or something, honestly, I would just recommend not getting this thing. Honestly, I wish for some reason Sony would have priced this a little bit cheaper than $100. Yes, the $100 price tag could have been justified if they would have made a better user interface. They would have put better games on the box. They would have gave us more features on the UI, and they would have put analog sticks. Honestly, I would be okay if they honestly bump up the price of this thing to maybe say like $105 or $110. Yes, that's a lot to ask for when it comes to retro gaming, but you have to take in consideration if they would have put more time and effort into the games, because the PS1 does have some killer hits that just aren't on here, and just the fact the user interface looks like poo and does not look great at all. It pretty much looks like garbage. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't care. I will admit it does look like garbage. Then maybe they could have upped the price of this whole thing. But honestly, I think, like I said, what's going on is the fact that they just wanted to pump this out as fast as possible, make a little quick cash here for the holidays, and then call it a day. They don't even care really about they don't really care about the quality control going on the PS1 Classic. That pretty much wraps up this video. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out. Beep.